Hi, all. I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Today is Thursday, April 14th, 2022, and you're watching WGAN TV live at 5. We have an awesome show for you today. Matterport Axis Motorized Mount Smartphone Rotator, first impressions. And here to talk to us about that is Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hi there.
And Jeff. Jeff, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Dan.
Jeff was previously on our show. Jeff Nitschke, owner and Capture NW in the North Idaho and Eastern Washington State area. Website www.capturenw.com. Jeff's previous guest appearance, WGAN TV, a Matterport service provider customer journey. Jeff Nitschke with Capture NW. And Dave Avila has got kind of two roles, real estate photographer and Coldwell Banker Realty agent in Gilroy, California. That's about an hour and a half south of San Francisco, about 40 minutes south of San Jose. And Dave's been on the show before, 31 statistics to help sell virtual tours to real estate agents. And Dave is at daveavila@gmail.com. Thank you both so much for being on the show today. You're prolific posters in the We Get Around Network Forum. You're always giving and sharing. And I just thought, well, this would just be perfect. So Matterport Axis smartphone rotator came out in the last 10 days. And Dave, why don't we begin with you? You had a chance to shoot. What's your impression of the tour that you shot with the Matterport Axis?
Yeah, good question. So just the tour itself, when I compared it to my existing camera, which is the Ricoh SC2, the quality was good. It did a good job. The camera that I had is a Samsung S20, which is it's about a year and a half old. It's got a good camera on it. And I was looking to see if I could get a better viewpoint with that camera.
Okay, so just describe your tour though. Were you happy with your Matterport virtual tour, your Matterport digital twin shot with your the Matterport Axis plus the Samsung S20 FE?
Yeah, the bottom line on that's yes. It was satisfactory.
Better than expected, worse than expected in terms of the end result?
End result was about what I was expecting. It did a good job. It compared well to my existing equipment.
Could you tell a difference between, you had mentioned using a Ricoh Theta SC2. Could you tell the difference between using a 360 camera and using Matterport Axis?
Well, I tell you, it was very difficult. In fact, I actually saw I thought the Axis setup took a little bit better resolution, but the difference is the scanning of the ceiling area and the floor area. So and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But that, as far as the basic, scan, to me, I thought it was acceptable.
Now, question for
acceptable
you.
or better than acceptable?
Yeah, a little bit better.
Excuse me, Jeff. Yeah.
Did you do the single pass or did you do the complete pass?
I did both. And you know what? I saw a difference because and I don't know if we want to talk about.
Let me ask you about that in a second. Let me go back to Jeff and ask for his initial impressions. Jeff, your initial impressions of the actual Matterport tour that you created with the Matterport Axis and your smartphone.
I think overall it did a really good job for what it is. And I'm shooting on iOS. So I'm shooting on the latest, greatest iPhone 13, the Pro Max. So it did a really good job for what it is. Now, I wouldn't replace it with what I currently use, a Pro 2, but that's just because I'm using the best of the best anyway.
So the Matterport tour itself, how did you think it compared to a Matterport Pro 2 3D camera shoot?
I noticed a little bit of twisting in the model, so I'm a little bit more subjective to that. And then there was a couple holes in the mesh. Now, I'm sure if I would have maybe done some more scan positions and followed the wall, that may have cleared up some of those issues. But overall, I think for what it is, I think it's a pretty decent product.
You keep giving me this qualifier. Is the tour, is it good? Is it okay? Is it acceptable? Is it?
I think it's good. My idea of acceptable is a little bit different because I'm dealing with a little bit higher class clientele that they probably wouldn't accept the access as what they would be paying for.
Okay. So give us a little deeper dive into how the Matterport Axis Matterport Tour looked compared to the Pro 2, and then you have some other 360 cameras that you've been shooting with as well.
So the Pro 2 does a much better job of, you still get a little bit of hole at the ceiling or at the floor, but that's the nature of a Matterport camera. But you have a much higher quality image because once again, I do believe that's like a 134 megapixel camera equivalent. And then you're getting a much cleaner dollhouse with the Pro camera than you are with the 360 or the Access.
And do you want to compare it specifically to a Ricoh Theta Z1, a Ricoh Theta X, a Ricoh Theta SC2? I think you've shot with all those as well as maybe an Insta 360 perhaps.
No,
as well.
I haven't shot with the Insta recently just because I don't like the quality of the Insta.
Okay.
Once again, the Insta is really grainy.
Okay, we'll put that aside. So compared to Ricoh Theta, 3 different versions that you've shot the same model unit with.
I think it is comparable with the 360 cameras, and only the most scrutinized person would probably be able to pick apart what they may or may not like about it. So I think it's comparable with some of the 360s. Once again, I think the Z1 or the Theta X is going to ever so slightly bump out in quality because they're a little bit better than the Access.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, I think the Access is doing a pretty good job for what it is with the phone rotator.
Okay, so Dave, you started to talk about 1 rotation, 2 rotations, so like 1 potato, 2 potato. Could you tell us a little bit about the shooting? Like you were talking about up here at the top and down below, the zenith, the nadir. What's happening in the tour? What did you try in terms of your experimentation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that impacts what the scan looks like. So what I did was I took a simple scan, and the simple scan has the camera, the phone kind of facing downwards on the floor at a negative 15-degree angle. So it leaves a hole in the ceiling that's probably about 6 feet in diameter above where the location of the camera is.
It's blurred in the zenith.
In the zenith, yeah.
And,
on the
and
floor,
about how much bigger is that than the Matterport Pro 2 3D camera?
Jeff, you got the answer on that one?
Once again, it's not that big on the Pro 2. I want to say that it might be a 24 to 36 inch hole in a Pro 2.
Yeah. So with the SC2, I was seeing about a 2 foot diameter up at the top. But then when you do a complete scan, you flip the phone up 15 degrees positive and take another scan of the 6 shots, and that closes that diameter down to a couple feet, 24 inches, which is comparable with the SC2 camera. Now, one thing I noticed, maybe Jeff, you've got something to say on this. When I took the simple scan, it did 1 loop and it generated a picture. The quality was very similar to the SC2. When I took 2 scans and the software combines those together, the image quality was not as close in color, saturation, contrast, etc., as the simple scan. I don't know if you noticed that.
My experience with the simple versus the complete scan is they were similar in quality on mine, other than the stitching wasn't nearly as good on the complete scan.
So that's interesting. So doing something that maybe took you, how long did it take for the model that you shot? How long did it take to shoot with 1 pass around? How long did it take
The simple scan, I was able to complete the entire house with the garage and rear patio in 30 minutes.
And how long when you tried to double it to make
The complete
Zenith and the
scan,
Nader look better?
the complete scan, I did not get the rear patio or the garage. It took me 2 hours.
2 hours.
Wow.
2 hours.
And for that 2 hours or that extra hour and a half, you got the Zenith to look a little nicer.
Yeah.
And how about the Nadir where the
The
tripod
The
is?
overall dollhouse looked a little bit better, but there was more stitching errors with inside that tour to where you have a little bit of the jagged lines to where they didn't line up quite right
So
in the actual 360.
this may be a silly question. I'll ask you both, starting with Jeff. Is it worth shooting the 2 hour version versus the half-hour version?
I probably wouldn't. What I would have done instead is I may have picked up a couple additional scan positions in the single pass to make a cleaner model.
Okay, and Dave, for you, was it worth that extra effort?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because what the benefit is up at the ceiling, people aren't, if you're doing a house, people aren't looking at the ceiling. They want to, you want to keep the level down. So there really wasn't any advantage that I perceived. And especially with the different quality in the result, I found the simple scan would be the way to go.
So Jeff, with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, you were shooting it on the LiDAR setting, correct?
Correct.
And
I received the same high temperature warning that you had got.
so I got a high temperature warning after I think it was 11 rotations.
Wow.
I think I saw it at somewhere in that 5 or 6, but once again, I didn't take my phone out of the case, which the instruction book said that I probably should.
Okay. So interesting thing to note, because I know that I got a temperature warning. We write about that in the We Get Around Network forum. And I took it, I have it out of my case because I happen to have a very complex case. So I took my case off, but I still got that temperature warning. That kind of made me a little anxious. I wonder if other people have been getting that.
And I just grinned and I just motored through.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess what the warning said is we're going to kind of reduce the depth.
Yep, I think it reduced the detail of the LiDAR that the iPhone was capturing.
Yeah. Okay. So, which is kind of, I really want the depth data and make sure that and I think in your case, maybe in your garage, you only did 2 scans, I think. And so you really wanted the depth data to capture the full space for your model. Yeah, I noticed you didn't it didn't look like you went to a lot of places.
Well, I didn't go to all 4 corners. What I'm basically looking for when I go into a garage is I want to show the garage, and then in the capture app, I'm looking to make sure that there's no blatant holes in the.
Yes, and you did that with I think 2 scans. One of them you had to do because you had the car parked in the garage, so you needed the other side in order to complete the complete your. Incidentally, while we're talking about this for our viewers, if you want to see the examples that Dave and Jeff and I shot using the Matterport Axis, we have a little shortcut. Normally, I'd send you to www.wganforum.com and search for the tag Matterport Axis. But to go right to the first impressions discussion, wgan.info/axis-examples. I do want to talk about capture, but in the process, and before we get into that, I just want to ask, if I came back and gave you a sample Matterport, I'll start with Jeff. If I came back to you and I gave you a blind taste test to say, here are 5 models. One was shot with the Matterport Pro 2 3D camera, one with the Ricoh Theta Z1 51GB, the Ricoh Theta SC2, the Ricoh Theta X, which I think is right now in beta for Matterport, but will come online shortly. And lastly, Matterport Axis using an iPhone 13 Pro Max. Could you tell the difference?
I could probably tell the difference now. I probably wouldn't be able to nitpick unless I really got in on like I say a Pro 1 versus a Pro 2, because those are very similar. But if I didn't know the access, I might think that it would have been one of the 360 cameras.
So you could tell the difference to say I could tell a Pro 2 versus a 360 or that other category.
Correct.
And Dave, how about for you?
Yeah, I think the same. It would match the quality of at least the SC2.
Could you tell the difference though? If I gave you three or five scans, do you think, and you didn't know which was shot with which camera, do you think you could tell the difference?
Well, the Theta cameras like the Z1 definitely has a little more detail in like if you look at the lines of the doors and the doorways and stuff, they're a little crisper. And one of the things that I would look on, Jeff had a comparison. If you look at the numbers on the oven, on the cooktop, they're much clearer with the more costly cameras.
So I think the interesting thing is my wife and I had the house renovated, and we did a walkthrough with the general contractor, and we walked around with the flashlight looking at the paint job. And he says, I'm sorry, but no normal person walks around with a flashlight when you walk through a house to check out the paint job. So I think we really have to walk through your house with normal lighting and without being, so persnickety to look that close, because nobody does that except on the day that you're inspecting the quality of the paint job. So are you guys a little bit too tough on maybe Matterport Axis to say, nah, we can tell the difference and I'm going back to the Pro 2?
I might be a little bit biased there just because I've been shooting with the Pro camera since, well, the Matterport system came out. But I've also had experiences with the mesh or something not doing like it still happens from time to time with the 360 cameras to where you get the pancaking of a model. Something tells me that could probably still be an issue with this access as well.
Okay. All right. So just to give you, I'll offer my opinion here, because I shot with the Matterport Axis with a iPhone 13 Pro, and I was super surprised at how awesome it was. And I shot around my studio here, which means I had the camera way closer than 4 feet, and all the stitching looked nearly perfect. I was really pleasantly surprised, and the HDR on the windows and everything looked really good. So I think there's a whole separate conversation we're about to have about the process of capturing. But my perception is probably most clients except Jeff's would probably not notice the difference if asked to look at the final product, not how you showed up with whatever gear that you showed up with, but just the average person looking at a tour and probably doesn't care about that thing in the ceiling and the blur thing in the bottom, because they're there to buy a house or make some other actionable thing, as opposed to, well, that thing in the bottom, we could fix that by taking 2 hours to scan it rather than a half hour.
Well, in the 2 hour, I actually got more leg in it because I actually switched over to my Manfrotto because I didn't want to lose my phone. So once again, if I were to do that again, I'd really have to play with the legs to suck the legs in a little bit, because I ended up with legs in just about every scan position.
Okay, that's something to talk about. So why don't we move on to the process of let's assume that the tour is either good enough or awesome, however one wants to define that. But now let's talk about the process of actually creating it. So Dave, what was your experience using the Matterport Axis and your Samsung S20 FE smartphone? How did that compare? Because you use an a Ricoh Theta SC2 when you shoot Matterport tours. What was what was different about the Matterport Axis versus the Ricoh Theta SC2 360 camera?
Big difference, timing.
What's that?
So the scans to loop around the 6 shots takes about 20 seconds. And then, then you've got to walk back in the room if you've had to leave, or you're walking around it as it scans. Then you've got to undo the knob, reset the angle, tighten the knob, get out of the picture, hit the remote, and another 20 seconds or so.
I'm totally confused. What's this change the angle? Didn't you do it as just one pass?
Well, I'm talking about if you could do complete. If you're
Okay,
not doing complete,
I'm going to suggest this on the complete that Jeff took 2 hours instead of a half hour, and I didn't even and attempt it, and you tried it. I didn't understand why Matterport even offers that setting. I just think it just made it extra complex. And if I was them, I would just disable it so that you only have 2 settings.
So the reasoning on that, Dan, is for the iPhones or the Androids that don't have the wide angle lens.
I'm shooting with an iPhone 13 Pro.
So-
I'm spoiled.
So we're all spoiled, and we have the fancy cameras, the fancy camera phones with wide angle lenses.
Yeah.
So when I talked to Matterport, they actually suggested with the wide angle lens only doing the single pass.
that makes sense.
Okay. So, and is that true, Dave, for your phone as well? It has a wide angle lens on it.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So attention world, if you don't have a wide angle lens, you may have to do twice around, and your pain point is probably going to be so high, it's not going to be worth it. So either go upgrade your phone or look at a different solution. I can't even imagine spending 2 hours to shoot something that can take you a half hour.
Time is money.
Time is
Yeah.
money. Yeah. So Dave, was that your biggest conclusion? Time is money?
It was, because with the SC2, it takes like 20, 25 seconds to do a scan. And the other thing with the Android phone, and this was a mention that Jeff had, there's no sound to tell you that it's done with its rotation. So either you've got to poke your head around the corner, we'll look at your watch, is it done? Or if you're in a big enough room, walk around behind the camera so that you don't get in the picture. But that was kind of a nuisance, whereas the little SC2, it chirps, and once it chirps, it's processing the image. You can go and grab the monopod and move it, and bam, you're moving through the.
Can you hear that?
No, that motor is really quiet. And if there's any,
I have the sound set up so you can hear the shutter. You can't hear that?
No, well, I can't hear it from here.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
I heard the shutter that time. But if you don't, I think what he was saying is that capture, that shutter click wasn't coming across on Android. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I see. So you don't hear any of that, and the tone.
No, there's nothing. It's just absolutely quiet.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that kind of goes to wish list. We started a wish list in the forum. Jeff, you've already posted to the Matterport Access wish list discussion to add sound to the Matterport Access so that you actually know it's done with the scan. Otherwise,
Or a louder motor to where you
a
can
louder
actually-
motor. Otherwise, you're going to peak and you're going to do a cameo in one of your shots.
Correct.
Jeff, I think Dave's overall conclusion of Matterport Access capture versus a 360 camera was speed. What was your takeaway in comparing either to a 360 camera or to a Matterport Pro 2 in terms of the capture process?
So as far as the capture process, I think it's going to be similar if doing the single spin with the Matterport Pro camera and the Access. I would also agree that any of the 360 cameras are going to be a bit quicker because once again, they're a one touch, one click capture. So it's boom, click, you're on to the next scan position.
So if that's the biggest difference, then there's this. I guess it's really. I really do want to talk about the gear, but maybe I just switch directions for a moment and say, well, who is the Matterport Access for? Jeff, I'm going to ask that question to you because you're a full-time professional real estate photographer shooting high-end photography, photos, video, aerial, and probably visual storytelling, things that I'm not even aware of. As a professional real estate photographer, would you ever buy a Matterport Access?
Well, I did, so I can intelligently speak about it. but I think it's really geared towards somebody who is just wanting to dip their toes into Matterport, that has heard about this Matterport thing and now is kind of wanting to try it before moving into a much more expensive camera system. So let's say you're a mom and pop rental, or you have a couple of vacation rentals. This is an easy way for you to get into that with the smartphone that you already have in your pocket and create a Matterport asset of whatever your property may be.
Dave, let me ask you the same question, because you wear two hats, or in our digital world, you wear two avatars. First, as a real estate photographer, and second, as a real estate agent. What's your takeaway in terms of who Matterport Axis is for?
Well, so I'll answer the question of the professional photographer first, because for me, the time issue and the ease of moving the equipment around the room is so much easier with a monopod and a 360 camera, that the difference between, spending $90 for the package, the Axis kit, and $280 for an SC2, you're going to make that up savings wise, after your first couple of gigs.
Okay, so stay on this topic for me for a moment.
Yeah.
So as a real estate photographer, as Jeff, time is money. So
Yeah.
If you're a photographer, like, you have to. So is it possible for a real estate photographer who's never done Matterport, that Matterport Access is the training wheels to get started, to dip your toe in it and say, oh yeah, I'll go buy a more expensive camera, but I already got a tripod for $79, or maybe go for the $149 and get 5 Matterport tours for a year?
I believe that that's exactly what this tool is.
Training wheels for real estate photographers. Dip your toe in it.
Yeah, dip your toe in it, whether you're a real estate photographer, a real estate agent, or say a mom and pop with some rentals that you want to get into.
Okay, well, Dave is a real estate agent. How about from that avatar, from that hat?
Yeah, I was really focused on that because, the real estate agents are looking at out of pocket to do the marketing before they even sell a property. And that's why in my research, a lot of them, a large percentage of them are not using the 360 tours because of the cost package. So this is where I would sort of divide into people who maybe have one home every month or every couple months, and they could do it themselves if they're technically skilled enough. Now, the other part of that package is that situation is a lot of real estate agents are, in the 50 plus age range, and a lot of them are women. And not to diminish the technical capabilities, but personally seeing what goes on in my office with the agents and kind of the difficulties they have.
I'll say it a little bit differently. So rather than talking about age or sex, is to say if you're not technology savvy, then even this Matterport Axis may be a challenge. Is that a way to describe it?
Yeah, you're very gracious, Dan. But yeah, that's what I'm getting at. And just in terms of
for speaking as someone who's almost 40 years old, I'm sensitive to that topic, and so I'll just say, if you're technology, well, let me turn it around and ask that question. You're a real estate agent. How tech savvy do you need to be in order to be able to use Matterport Axis? Did you find it hard, or did you find it hard to take it out of the box, set it up in Capture, and publish to Matterport? And you're tech savvy. What about those that are not?
Well, so there's two parts to this, because the first part is the Capture, setting the thing up in Capture, but then you're into the Matterport software. Do you know how to put the mirrors in? Do you know how to put the windows in? And that's where it gets a little more. You're gonna have to spend some time. There's no getting around it. It's going to take some time to learn how to produce the tour that's going to look acceptable.
Okay, so let's actually jump into the technology. We've talked about the tours, and they're probably good or good enough or acceptable. And in my case, I'm like totally thrilled and I probably can't tell the difference when I look at it. I don't think most clients except Jeff's clients will be able to tell the difference.
I would agree.
And the capture process, you kind of, there's two forks in the road. And you might say, oh, if you're going to be doing any kind of volume, then you must upgrade at least to a 360 camera or to a Matterport Pro 2 3D camera, depending on what you're doing. Or there's this fork in the road. This is probably, I'm going to say two forks. One is you are either looking for a training wheels experience, an on-ramp to the highway, and can say at a price point of $79 for the Matterport Axis or another $10 for the tripod that comes with it, or for a little bit more, 149, have 5 active Matterport tours at any one time. That's probably sounds like a deal until you're doing a lot of Matterport, which you then have to, as soon as you're up to 60 miles an hour on the highway, I think we would agree this is not the right tool if you're doing volume.
Correct.
But if you're doing one house once a month, once every other month, it's your vacation rental. You're doing some, but as soon as you hit any kind of volume where time is money, this is not the solution for you.
I would agree with that comment.
Perfectly fine. On ramp, perfectly fine. Get a taste of Matterport, perfectly fine. Does that kind of sum it up?
Well, one other category I would add is one shot use, like you mentioned, vacation rental, like somebody that wants to do their own 360 and, and maybe wants to play around a little bit. If they want to get that and shoot, that's and another thing that was
perfect. It's literally perfect. It solves a problem, but you got to be tech savvy. Let's talk about that. Let's break it down. Jeff, you had some challenges. You started writing about the tripod. Why don't we begin with the tripod that comes with it? What was your assessment and why?
It felt a little Fisher Price.
Meaning it felt like a toy.
Correct.
Okay, keep in mind it's $10.
I understand that.
Add-on.
And I understand that. I just wouldn't feel comfortable having that set up outside anywhere. With the slightest breeze, that's taking your $80 investment along with your $1,000 phone with it.
So you were kind enough to do, you bought it, you tested with it. What's going to happen with that tripod?
It's probably going to sit in the box that it's still in.
Okay, meaning you was that was because you were concerned about your iPhone Pro 13, your 13 Pro Max phone, and was it because of the tripod? Was it because of the Matterport axis rotation?
It's really top heavy, and if it's outside with the slightest amount of breeze, I was afraid that any breeze that came along was going to knock the whole rig over.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, did you have any concern about the tripod at all, Matterport tripod?
Well, I think it did a good job, and I was just shooting inside, so that I didn't think about the wind thing. It's definitely more stable than a monopod, but if you've got any sort of photography equipment already, and you've got a tripod, it's going to be your photography tripod's going to be more stable.
I think I should point out for our viewers that Jeff was, I think, the first one to identify this, that the Matterport videos, the Matterport evangelist Amir Frank put together 2 excellent videos on the Matterport axis. Unfortunately, the tripod that he's used in the videos that were created on February 8th, 2022 was different than this tripod. So if you watch those videos, know that the tripod is different. I could imagine Amir is scrambling to update, but it's a different tripod. Do you think this tripod was a better or worse decision than the one that they were showing?
If you look in some of those earlier tours, I think I caught one where he's in the mirror, but he's also holding onto that tripod when it's in capture.
I noticed, I was watching it and I noticed it shakes a little bit and then it stops.
That was the one, and that was the one that we didn't buy. That was the one that was the initial
video. So I
So,
think they probably upgraded it.
so Dave, you didn't have any angst about losing your smartphone because of the tripod?
No, no, I thought it was pretty secure
Did you
inside.
have any angst in terms of, I don't know about you, but my phone's $1,000 plus. Did you have any angst about putting it up here in the
No,
Matterport?
no, it's very securely attached. It
Okay.
screws into the tripod really securely. There's a rubber grommet there that kind of, tightens it up. No, I thought that part of it was good.
Um,
And I agree with that for indoor use. Indoor, I wouldn't have any real issues. It's anytime that you start stepping outside is where I would really have any issue with using that particular tripod.
Okay, when I looked at the tripod, I would say, oh, it's training wheels for Matterport. It's good for a couple tours so that you can maybe make a decision. Do you want to invest in a $300 360 camera, a $400, a $1,000 360 camera, or today Matterport Pro 2 3D camera, $3,395. Plus, you really need a case. Plus, you need an iPad. Plus, you need something to hold it. And anyway, so my takeaway on the tripod, I've gone through good quality professional Manfrotto tripods that I've worn out. I just would imagine if anybody was doing any volume on this, these snap things here, they're not going to last too long. And I kind of noticed the tightening of the stuff here. I just had angst.
Yeah.
But it's $10 as an add-on, and I think for what it is, it's okay. I kind of want to ask more about the gear. Dave, were you happy about how this thing works, rotates, attaches, configures?
Yeah. For $79, without the tripod, I think it's an amazing feat of engineering because that they have that little rotator. I mean, it's solid. It's a very solid little bundle. The metal parts that hold the phone are solid, and the software that's in there to make the thing work, it's pretty amazing for that cost. Yeah.
And Jeff,
I would agree with that. It feels the rotator itself feels really well constructed and feels worth every bit of that $79.
I was impressed that when it grips the phone, Dave, you mentioned it, it's got these pads, and I've probably used 5 or 7 other brand of rotators over the last 10 years. This one actually felt like it was securing my phone, and I didn't have the angst about whether it was going to slip out. Was that you all have that impression too?
Yeah, it has good grippers on it.
Good grippers, and it's got this, I don't know what you call that, some kind of gear gripping thing for changing the angle, and that looked pretty secure. So I think I was pleasantly surprised that the hardware was maybe better than I expected for the $79.
I think I'd agree. It was impressive for that price.
Did you all, before we move on to kind of setting it up and getting it to work with the Capture app, did you have any other observations about the gear itself? Maybe Jeff?
I was kind of surprised that it was a 3/8 mount on the top of that little tripod.
So,
And instead of a 1/4-20. So in that case, I would have left the 1/4-20 to 3/8 adapter out of the access.
yeah, so here's what we're talking about here. So this actually is a professional mount.
Correct.
So let me see if I can, I don't know if it timed out here. Let me see if I can just turn it off if I still have it on. Okay, that's on. I can see the green lights. I'm going to press it to turn it off. And here it is. So it actually shipped with this piece that went in here that would make it really connect to a consumer grade tripod.
Correct.
So is your observation was since it's shipping with a professional mount that they probably should have taken that out?
No, I think this once again goes back to I think they last minute probably switched to this tripod versus the one that Amir was using.
Yeah.
Because the one that Amir was using was actually using the 1/4 20 mount instead of the
Yeah.
3/8.
Yeah, I think it was one of two things. One is they looked at their own marketing video and said, when that thing rotates, the camera is actually shaking. That's not really a confidence builder. And then the other thing just might be supply chain about like, okay, that's what we built it around, but we can't get them. So one or the other. What about this remote? Did you all have any thoughts on the remote?
I think that remote worked surprisingly well.
Did you try using it, Jeff? Did you try using it where there was a wall and you had to hide behind the wall and use
No,
it?
I had no issues. I mean, I even went over to the other side of the house on a couple occasions, and I still had decent connectivity with that little clicker.
Yeah. Dave, did you use the?
Yeah, I did. And I thought it was slick. There's a place on the side wherever your hand is where you can stick it, the magnet sticks on the side of the rotator.
Yep. So the little round circle that's on the axis.
Yeah, this snaps on there.
Boom.
That was pretty cool.
So it's on there pretty good.
Yeah, so instead of carrying it around in your pocket or setting it down somewhere, you can just flip it on there.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they sell that as an accessory for when you lose it.
It is easy to lose. So let's see what else it came with. This came, I guess, on the top of my tripod. Is that what
Yep,
that was?
that's why I covered the 3/8.
Yeah, and I don't remember what this little band was here. It did come with a nice case. It looks like it would actually keep everything together in one place.
That little rubber band is from your USB-C cable.
Dave, you had some questions about that cable that it came with.
Well, I saw the cable and I don't have a cable like that in my collection of cables, and I have no idea how you'd use a double-ended USB-C cable.
Yeah.
You can't plug it into a charger.
I wish I had it earlier.
I have a couple of the USB-C wall warts just because I'm an Apple guy. But I didn't even take mine out of the deal. I just used one of my other USB-C chargers to charge.
Yeah.
So it had USB-C on both ends of the cable.
Right.
I had to scramble a little bit to go find a charger to do the charging because I have a lot of old USB type chargers, but I did have one of the cables. So that was interesting. Is there anything else in terms of the gear? Any observations? The equipment? I think what I'm hearing is for the money, it was either a good value or an exceptional value. And again, back to this training wheels. If that's what if you want to get started with Matterport, it's a great.
I think it's a great value for what it is. I think it's well priced for the equipment which you receive.
I'm gonna ask about the setup of the gear and the pairing with the app in a moment, but I did want to ask a question because I know Matterport's been talking in their media releases about they expect that companies are going to buy. My impression was dozens or hundreds and ship these to their remote offices to be capturing spaces. I'll give you my bias and ask you to react. My bias is I'm not sure that an employee wants to use their own phone on this thing. You and I, or the three of us, have had the confidence to say, okay, and we're watching our phones like a hawk, but I'm not sure that somebody wants to volunteer their phone when they receive this. And the other thing Matterport has to address this issue is if you do 11 scans with an iPhone 13 Pro set on LiDAR and you get a temperature warning.
Right. Are you cooking your phone?
Pardon?
Are you cooking your phone?
Are you cooking your employee's phone who reluctantly did it to say, that's enough for me. I'm not doing this. I'm concerned about my phone dropping and now I'm concerned about burning it up. So is Matterport being a little bit too aggressive to think that there's going to be a ton of recipients and corporations that are going to go scan with this?
I don't know who wants to answer first.
Jeff?
I spent a little bit of time in real estate brokerage across a couple different brands. And I could see a couple brokerages buying this, thinking that they're going to have agents with a line around the block to come and do this. But I don't see agents lining up to check this out to scan it themselves. They would much rather write a check and have somebody do it for them.
I'm not even thinking real estate agents, though. I'm thinking corporate offices that have a retail space and they want to get all, they got 3,000 retail spaces. This is only a $89 solution with the tripod, and we'll just have them use their own phone and scan
On
a
those
space.
larger commercial spaces, I think once again, they're going to be looking for the higher quality.
Okay. If they're okay with the quality, is an employee going to put their own phone in this device?
Probably not.
I don't know. I have a bias on that. Dave, you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think I'd agree with you, although I had not thought about that. I mean, I thought the idea of sending it out to a store maybe that's got, displays that they want to check and make sure the displays are set up. And so they said, they have people send in a scan. But, putting your phone on that's a good point. But, I think probably they'd find somebody that would do it.
Let's switch gears and talk about the actual, I take this stuff out of the box and somehow I get it to pair with the Bluetooth and somehow I get it to upload to Matterport. I think the three of us are pretty savvy with this. So I'll just assume that the three of us, somehow we figured it out.
It took me a couple of minutes when I first set it up, because the first thing I went into is I went into settings, like I was setting up a camera like I do for my other capture devices, before I read the instructions that I had to do that through Capture. So once I read that I had to do it through Capture, it was really easy to set up.
Ditto for me. I did literally same thing. I didn't look at the instructions. I just went to where my Bluetooth devices were. I didn't see it showing up. I'm scratching my head.
This thing's not working.
And sure enough, I guess that's the takeaway tip from today's show is you pair the Bluetooth within the Matterport Capture app. Dave, since you're this dual avatar of a photographer and a real estate agent, could you imagine the agents in your office figuring out the process of setting up a Matterport cloud account, downloading the Matterport Capture app, setting up the Matterport Axis, pairing physically the Matterport Axis with their smartphone, and then pairing the Matterport Axis plus smartphone with Bluetooth, doing the capture, and then uploading to Matterport Cloud? What's your impression? Is this easy peasy for the average person to do, or is this going to be a struggle unless you're tech savvy?
We're talking about the average person and, easy peasy. I don't think it's easy peasy. There's too many steps there. I mean, the fact, by the way, I'll throw my hat in the ring and say, I tried to pair through Bluetooth and I got a request for a passcode. And it's like, whoa, what the passcode? I think the little fold out instructions that comes with it didn't even tell you when to turn on the rotator. And that would have been helpful.
Could I say parenthetically, because I thought these instructions, even though I know what to do, even when I didn't think this was clear. And
No.
I'm hoping one of our viewers takes it upon themselves to either rewrite the instructions for the We Get Around Network Forum community or creates a video showing the process of how to pair the phone. Because I think when I literally tried to follow the instructions, it's just not there for me. You both, I think, are smiling a little bit. Did you have the same reaction?
Yeah.
Once I got out of settings and I actually got into, because somewhere I was just like, once again, I haven't even read the entire instruction booklet yet. I just read what I needed. Once I found out that I had to pair through the Capture app, I was up and running in just a minute or two.
Dave,
Yeah,
I want
same
to go back to
situation.
the average person because you're not average. You're tech savvy. This is not hard for you, but for someone who's not tech savvy, are they going to figure this out?
Well, I think if the instructions were to get it connected the instructions would be helpful, and it's not, difficult, because after I followed the instructions, and tried to connect through the app, you have to find out that you have to have pictures of where it is on the screen, and that kind of stuff, so people know what they're looking for. But I think the steps after that to get a working model up on, like you said, you have to set up an account, you have to upload it. When do you know that it's been uploaded? Oh, I get an email. Well, okay. So all that kind of stuff is, somebody has to have the initiative and the reason to go through that stuff, and it's usually going to be save some money.
Yeah, you
But it's
kind
going
of
to take time.
you kind of need that hand holding welcome to Matterport video or tutorial, to where it's like, welcome to Matterport. First thing that you're going to want to do is set up your account.
Yeah.
Give us your credit card information, and then go from there. And then they're going to probably also need, here's how to do it on Android, and here's how to do it on iOS.
Yeah.
That's kind of my impression. I mean, I'm pretty visual. I was expecting that it was nice that they had these pretty, pictures of the different uses of it, but I really thought it needed those kinds of pictures on the instruction side, because when I first put the phone in, I put it in backwards. Okay, there's the Matterport, logo back there, and there are my lenses, but I did it the other way.
And having that with the Samsung with the 3 vertical lenses, and having the iPhone with the 3 and the triangle, and just a little illustration of where does that go in that camera mount and how to kind of adjust that. I mean, just an image on that would be worthwhile in that manual.
Well,
So I think what I'm hearing from you, Dave, is someone has to have a problem that they're motivated to go through the hoops to figure it out. Because if you're just starting out, I mean, we all had Matterport Cloud accounts, so we didn't have to think about that piece of the puzzle. We already had Matterport Capture app probably on our phone, so we didn't have to think about downloading the Capture app. We kind of understand a camera rotating, so the process of capture didn't really seem foreign to us. But I just wonder about the pairing of the equipment and the pairing of the Capture app to the device through Bluetooth does Matterport think that it's easier than it is? Or am I just obsessing here, and it really isn't that hard, and everybody will figure it out who's interested in doing this?
I don't know. I've sat in rooms full of agents that have meltdowns trying to connect to the Wi-Fi in an office meeting day.
Well, so maybe I'll ask the question differently. If you're a Matterport service provider, you're using a Matterport Pro 2 3D camera, $3,400 camera. When I bought mine, $4,500 camera. Should we feel threatened by the Matterport Axis paired with a smartphone? Or does this create a bigger market because more people will be exposed and creating Matterport tours and eventually going, oh, this is crazy. I can't do this for myself. I'm going to outsource this.
I know that we're definitely going to hear some of those belly aches. I'm not personally afraid, just because, once again, I think at least most of my clientele prefer that higher quality. Do I think there could be a little bit of cutting at some of the professional tour people? Plausibly, because I mean, it is a cheaper entry point and a way for somebody that might charge a little less than maybe I do.
I can't imagine a photographer attempting to use this for professional because it's too time consuming.
Right.
I mean, and also, I don't know if this matters at all. Maybe I'm being, I don't know what the word is, stuffy or something, but you show up for a shoot like this, it doesn't even look professional. I mean, am I being like nutty? Like you have to show up with some ginormous piece of equipment in a big case and,
Well, I spent $200 on my monopod that I use with my 360 cameras, because once again, it's a quality monopod and it looks the part.
Yeah.
So I think I was interested in being able to get enough information so that I could respond to agents that said, "Hey, have you heard about that thing? What do you think?" And I think how I would position it is, "Hey, it's a great entry if you feel like you're technically able to get through the process." And I would mention what that was. you've got to set up an account, you've got to download the software, you've got to connect the camera, and then, upload it. And, if you really want to scare them a little bit, tell them about the fact that they've got to go in and they've got to make some, edits on the floor plan map for windows and mirrors. Which is why I think the people that are going to be most interested are the ones who are not doing a high volume, because if they're doing a high volume, they're making enough money to pay somebody.
Right.
But to get in and say, hey, I'm hear about the 360 stuff. I want to be able to show my client in a listing presentation that I offer 360s. And if they're willing to put the time in and they learn how to do it, they're going to save a few bucks and they're going to start making money. And they say, hey, Dave, could you come over and do the shoot for me? I don't have time to do it myself. So I think from that standpoint, it's a good thing.
And I think you with two hats, I think, has an interesting strategy. Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you're not still doing this, but you're happy to do shoots for agents in your office because you want to be the open house person in terms of getting leads in the open house, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. But I'm starting to charge. Plus, I've got other stuff now. I do the drone. I got a drone license, and I've got a camera that can shoot the pictures and the video tour. So it's kind of like the turnkey solution with the website, single page website, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Incidentally, while we've been sitting here, my phone's been beeping, and I do find it kind of I don't know about you, but I go through withdrawals if my phone is not next to me and in my pocket. This is really hard for me to put my phone more than 3 feet away from me. And then because of how it's engineered, because of how the volume, I can't make this picture go away. It's hidden behind here. Yeah. And so if my phone starts to ring, all I can do is turn the ringer off, but then I won't hear it make noise when it's so it's anyway, I'm probably in the weeds on that. I think probably my takeaway from today's show is if you watch to this point and you were saying, well, should I get it, not get it? If you look at it probably as training wheels for Matterport, and it's a good on-ramp at whether you're paying the $79.89 or $149, it's probably not, you're a business person, whether you're a real estate agent, a photographer, you own a bed and breakfast, you own a house for rent, you have whatever it is, and you're thinking about this, it's an easy training wheels to Matterport experience. And then if you do any kind of volume, and I would probably say more than 10 Matterport tours, you're going to quickly upgrade either to a 360 camera or to a Matterport Pro 2.
Once you get out of that starter account profile, this is no longer the device for you.
I think it's important to mention too, Dan, that if you buy the camera and the tripod, you still have to have a plan, a starter plan, which is either $9.99 a month, and in fact, it's not. They don't even have an annual plan offered. You can get it with the kit, and save a few dollars there, like $20 off of a year.
Yeah, I thought that was a good price. It works out to $5 a month instead of $10 a month, and you get up to 5 tours live at any one time. I did notice if you're interested in data at all, you can't order a Matter Pack presently. You can't order the BIM file. So if you're any kind of person who's thinking about Matterport for data, this is not that solution. This is really for, I think, for virtual tours, creating a 3D model. You can order.
I just couldn't imagine that data being very good with any of the stitching errors that may come out of the phone rotator.
Time will tell. So that'll be interesting. I think what we'll probably see at some point is a professional rotator, because I think as a member of the We Get Around Network forum pointed out, is say, hey, you upgrade your smartphone every year or two. That's an easier decision than upgrading to maybe a Matterport Pro 2 3D camera every year or two. If you had a rotator that maybe rotated fast and you felt confident in it, maybe it is kind of like, but again, to speaking to your point, Jeff, maybe it has to, the LiDAR data has to be good enough that you can use it for data capture and it doesn't create all these artifacts and everything else. Anyway, I didn't mean to jump in on you. Before we wind it up, did you either have questions for each other?
Did you have some questions that you were asking earlier before we went on camera?
Not that I can recall.
No,
Maybe we were just chatting about the
We probably covered it then. So, Jeff, did you have anything before we go? Did you have anything that you want to say?
Oh,
Dave?
I'm good.
Dave?
I would just repeat, I think it's a good package for the price. And, if you fit into that niche that can use it, even for, personal things like the rental or the bed and breakfast kind of a situation, like a one-time shot. Actually, I wouldn't use it for bed and breakfast. I meant the Airbnb. It would be it'd be helpful, useful.
Or
Awesome.
as a first-time agent to where maybe you only have one or two games.
Yeah.
One or two or training wheels to experience Matterport. I would send everyone to the We Get Around Network forum, wganforum.com. There's already 24 discussions on the Matterport Axis. If you look for you can either search for Matterport Axis within the forum or use the tag Matterport Axis. If you specifically want to see examples of example that Jeff has done, Dave has done, and comparable with other 360 cameras, the shortcut is wgan.info/axis examples. That's with a hyphen, AXIS hyphen examples. Dave and Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank
Sure,
you.
it's a pleasure.
Super excited to have Dave and Jeff on the show. They're so gracious to take the time to tell their experience using the Matterport Axis, especially since I know they're both super busy people. So again, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jeff. We've been visiting with Dave Avila. He's real estate photographer, Coldwell Banker Realty agent in Gilroy, California, about 1.5 miles south of San Francisco. If you want to follow up with Dave, you want to buy a house with Dave, daveavila@gmail.com. And Jeff Nitschke, he is the owner of Capture NW. Website is www.capturenw.com. And Jeff covers the North Idaho and Eastern Washington State in the We Get Around Network forum at LILNITSCH, little niche. And for Dave in the We Get Around Network forum at Data Venturer, DATAVENTURER. So for Dave and Jeff, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network forum, and you've been watching WGAN TV.